All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, good afternoon. Karl Rominger here, coming live from the WHP 580 studio. Number one rule in radio, turn your microphone on. We did do that today. 540-0580, 540-0580 is the talk line number. If you have a legal question, you call in, we'll get it answered here on the air. 540-0580. And, of course, throughout the week, if you need to visit us, you go to the web, romingerlaw.com, R-O-M-I-N-G-E-R, law.com. You can see profiles of all the attorneys, etc. And, of course, those of you that are regular listeners are probably also Facebook friends. And, of course, you can Facebook me. It's to Karl with a K and Rominger on Facebook. And we do some exclusive content on Facebook. You can also follow Rominger & Associates on Facebook. And I'm on Twitter as well. So keep it active if we can. Also want to remind you, while we're waiting for some callers, 540-0580 to get your legal questions answered here on the air. We've got a couple events coming up August 25th from 2 to 3 on this show. And here on WHP, I'm going to have David Nesbitt on from Keystone Elder Law. We're going to learn quite a bit about elder law, I hope, during that hour, and also take your calls. So if you have a friend or family member and you have concerns, you're wondering about the nursing home or devolution of the family estate, etc., we're going to have David Nesbitt on August 25th from 2 to 3 p.m., and I'd like you to tune in then. Also, if you stop at the Carlisle Bakery on 35 South Hanover Street in Carlisle, you can pick up a Rominger & Associates coffee mug if you order a large coffee there. So when you stop in at 35 South Hanover Street at the Carlisle Bakery, anytime from 7 to 8 a.m., Monday through Saturday, just tell them Karl sent you. Ask for your large coffee, and you'll get a free Rominger & Associates mug, they're very nice. Shane actually helped design them, and they keep your hot stuff hot and your cold stuff cold, and they're reusable and washable in the whole 9 yards, and actually they last a really long time. I have one from years ago, and we keep them designed basically the same. Also on Tuesday, September 4th, I'll be at the Harrisburg Hunters and Anglers to discuss gun rights and gun law. And that's Tuesday, September 4th at 7 p.m. at the Harrisburg Hunters and Anglers Association. You can look them up on the web. It's open to the public. Obviously, the membership meeting will be there that night as well, but it is open to the public on September 4th at 7 p.m. So if you want to talk about self-defense, gun rights, and all that good stuff, I'll be available as well. Of course, the talk line number today is 540-0580. Have you guys been following the George Zimmerman case? I'm not sure if it's exactly front and center at the moment. We've just had this tragedy, obviously, over the Batman movie, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But Zimmerman's case is interesting because we're going to see whether or not he wins his immunity hearing. And Florida has a better gun law, depending on what side of the coin you're coming at it from, than Pennsylvania. In Florida, you have the absolute right to stand your ground, but you also have the right not to be prosecuted if a judge finds that you had a reasonable basis. So instead of going straight to a jury trial, in Florida, if you assert the right of self-defense, you're entitled to a hearing in front of a judge where you can assert that you used the weapon, and if the judge finds that on its face it appears that it could be self-defense, basically they can't try you, granted immunity from trial. And that's to prevent a jury from second-guessing somebody. Now, here in Pennsylvania, even though we've gotten the Castle Doctrine and the standard ground laws in place, we don't have in Pennsylvania the right to an immunity hearing. So that may be something our legislature should think about, and those of you that are gun owners should think about. It's going to be wildly unpopular, by the way, if Mr. Zimmerman is not acquitted, but is told that he can't be prosecuted simply because of the immunity law. That's what makes it so controversial down there. Other aspect of that case, I mean, now they have some accuser coming out accusing him of a sexual assault. You always wonder about those things when these accusations come out after the person's already been made a public pariah. But we'll keep monitoring that. Eric, you're on WHP. Talk line number's 540-0580. What's going on, Eric?
Hi, how are you today?
Good.
Hey, I got a question. I have a permit to carry a firearm in the state of Pennsylvania, and you go into places where you see things, firearms not allowed. It's like there's an example of the movies like that. If they have a statement or they make a sign that says you're not allowed to bring guns into this establishment, and you do anyway, what are you violating? Are you violating their just little law, their little rule, or am I violating a state law? I understand like a post office has it posted. That's federal.
Right.
I understand that. But what about if I go into a bank or a movie house or a grocery store and they have it plainly marked "No firearms permitted"?
Yeah, I think that actually you're technically are not allowed to. Your concealed carry permit ends at that door, and what I mean by that is the concealed carry permit law allows for landowners to exclude the carrying of the firearms there. So it would seem to me you're in violation of the carry law at that point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because and here's the answer. I mean, we all believe in private property rights, and so if it's private property, I have the right to say no guns. I always tell Bob Durgan that I could say no cowboy hats at my house. Take it off at the door or don't come in, and it's the same with a firearm.
Now, is that such a severe penalty as, say, going into a federal building with a firearm?
I think technically you would be, you could get a misdemeanor, basically carrying it without a permit, because I don't think you're permitted to carry it there. But I don't know. I'd have to do a little chopping on the law there and see exactly which charge would apply. I would think if you did it accidentally, most of the time law enforcement isn't going to have a big deal about it. But I think if you knowingly did it, you'd be in trouble.
Mm-hmm. What about reciprocity in other states? It seems like in most states they recognize the Pennsylvania permit, but say if you go into Maryland, they don't.
Right.
Would you be able to travel from one state to another if I was going to Florida, like I would normally do once a year or so? Yes.
You can interstate travel with firearms and carry them from one place you're lawfully allowed to own it to another place you're lawfully allowed to own it. I think there's recommendations, obviously, that the firearm be unloaded, be packaged separately from the ammunition, and it be kept in a place not accessible to you generally as you're driving.
That would be the same if you didn't have a permit and you were going to the rifle range. I mean, that's how that would seem to me then.
Right. It's the same idea. Now, there was a guy in New Jersey, for instance, a few years ago, got himself in trouble. And, of course, he acknowledged that he was taking the gun from one house to another house or something like that. Mm-hmm. And the funny part was by talking to the police and saying that he was moving it solely inside of New Jersey, he sealed the deal, so to speak, to be convicted. On the other hand, if he'd simply just not answered where he was taking it, they may not have been able to convict him because they would have to prove that he was moving it internally in New Jersey, not to another state.
Right. Okay. Well, that answers that, I think.
All right, my friend.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
Sure. You too. Bye.
Karl Rominger here, answering your legal questions on WHP 580. I've got Diane up next. Diane, if you hold for the break, I will catch you on the back end. 540-0580. Oh, boy. You know how the crazy people are. They're always the last ones to know it. Go figure. Diane, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, hi, Karl. This is Diane. I have a question somewhat about child support.
Yes.
I guess the first thing I'm wondering is, if there's a problem that the individual is not paying the amount that supposedly be paying, but he's paying something, is that entered in if the individual was caught?
Yeah, I mean, here's the answer. Okay, I guess what I'm trying to
be very general, but I don't want to,
So if somebody's not making their full payment, but they're paying some.
Yes, some, right. But the individual also, when they receive a letter from the court,
right,
call, that's not being answered either. But the payments are still being made. So how much, of a problem down the road would that be? I'm thinking years.
Well, I'm not sure I completely follow the scenario here. I mean, you're saying the person the money is being paid or not being paid?
It is. It is, but not the full amount.
Right.
But they're still receiving letters, and it's not being followed up on.
Right. Well, at some point, they're going to do an enforcement action, and they're going to bring the person in and say, you need to pay up your arrearages or be found in contempt of court or are in contempt of court for not paying them up. And as a condition of purge, I'm going to put you in jail or pay all this money.
Okay.
So eventually there'll be an enforcement action. Now,
investment. Okay, eventually.
If the person legitimately can't afford to make the payment, then they're entitled to go back for a modification hearing and say, Judge, you ordered me to pay $500 a month. I can afford $300 a month. That's why I've been paying $300 a month.
Yes.
But a lot of guys and gals who pay support kind of goof that up, and they come in and they go, well, I couldn't afford it, and I can show I couldn't afford it. And you're like, Well, for 6 months you've been behind, and now this is an enforcement action, and they don't care whether you could afford it or not because the judge's solution is you should have modified it. So I always tell people the minute you can't afford your child support amount, and circumstances have changed somehow, and it causes you to be unable, because some people can't afford it when they enter it. It's kind of my joke, but if circumstances have changed a little bit, and you lost one of your jobs or something, or the employer cut back on all your hours, then you need to go modify immediately. Don't get behind the 8 ball on that.
Okay, so is there, like, what if this person is behind, like you said, because of the certain, the financial aspect? Okay, now what if he can't afford a lawyer? What do you do? And if they put you, in prison?
Well, I would. Well, if they put you in prison and you're behind, then you're just going to have to go to work release or do something. But they should still file for a modification, and they can do that on their own. Although, like I've experienced before, they might not do as well without a lawyer. But realistically, to get a lawyer to a support hearing could be as inexpensive as a few $100s. Oh,
really? Okay.
So when you're talking about the risk of prison and those sorts of issues, if you're going to spend $300 or $400 on an attorney, you're probably better off.
Yes, rather than do this on your own because.
Right, and the other thing in consulting with the attorney, maybe we can figure out, a lot of times when we go through things, we can say, well, wait a minute, I hear what you're saying and you want a modification, but you're not really entitled to one, and here's why, or here's why you're paying this amount. And a lot of times we find that people are paying the wrong amounts because, frankly, when they go in front of a hearing officer, they don't always know what to present, and they also don't always modify as time goes on. And so we find a lot of times the base numbers were based on incomes that are no longer realistic, particularly in this just job market.
Yes.
All right, Diane.
And would they be willing to like not bargain, but listen to that aspect of the of the details and details?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. That's the other reason, though, sometimes it's better to have a lawyer to intercede on your behalf than doing it yourself, is there's less emotion in it, too, and the lawyer can be a little more objective and say, this is kind of how things are. Sometimes we find when the litigants are involved, they want to speak very emotionally about their position, and then when the hearing officer questions them, they take it personally, and then they push back. And, this is the guy you're trying to convince to lower your support. In fact, there's a great sign in a district justice's or judge's office over in Palmyra for a while. I don't know if it's still up over there or not, but it says, you should not berate the staff of the judge you're about to go in front of. And it's kind of funny because, people come up to the window and scream at the poor, nice woman at the window about a parking ticket or something right before a hearing. And, of course, the joke is, why are you beating up on the judge's staff when you're going to go in and ask the judge to, forgive you or lower your fine or give you a free pass? Well, same thing with the hearing officers. You got to be very careful to treat them with respect, not because they're going to go out of their way, but they're just not going to listen to your arguments if you come across as overly emotional and hostile. And sometimes that's hard to do for some people, and it's generally hard to do when you're the person who's getting shafted, too.
Yes. I understand that. But like you said, with a lawyer, you'd be better prepared.
Right. All right, Diane?
Okay, thank you very much, Karl.
Thank you. Thank you for calling.
Your show.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Bye now.
540-0580. Karl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Call in 540-0580. Scott, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hey.
I got a question for you. One in regards to just what the lady was talking about, child support. I was on the other end of that, and they really don't. I found out that it doesn't really matter whether you lose a job or not. They end up saying, well, you have the capability of earning that amount, and that's what they keep you to.
You can be imputed in income, but in my experience, you the hearing officer may say that, and some judges may say, but if you present some evidence on the job searches, et cetera, it may be possible to, what do I want to say? It may be possible to convince the judge that you can't replace that income. We've done that before.
Okay, well, I just happened to hear that part of it.
But no, I understand what you're saying, though. That's a completely problematic issue.
Yeah. Now, my real question is, I got divorced, and my ex moved to a different school district, and I just found out that she recently moved to a different school district, but is going to keep our son in a other school district, in that same school district. Is that what? Is that legal?
So she's in a different school district than you, and the child would be in neither of your school districts.
Correct.
Theoretically, it's probably an issue for that school district unless there's some reason why. So she wants to keep the kid in the school district where she's no longer residing in.
Correct.
Well, I don't think, it's sort of like that tree in the forest theory. If the tree falls and nobody hears it, probably nothing happens, right? It doesn't make a sound.
Yeah.
But if somebody calls the school and says, wait, nobody's living in your jurisdiction anymore, then the school may have an issue with that.
Okay. What about...
And now the next question is, as a parent, you have to think about the continuity of your child's education, where you would really fall. So is it really in your child's best interest to blow the whistle on that or not? Or are you planning on taking a stronger custody tack down the road? But I wouldn't do it just to spite the other parent.
Yeah, that's not what I'm about. What I'm concerned about is because he lives with her, am I I mean, if something would come back and I know about this, am I...
I wouldn't think so. I don't think you're on the hook for anything because you don't have control over it.
Okay, that's what I was after.
And I think there's a difference between actively, now if the school district called you and you perpetrated a fraud on them, that would be different.
Okay.
But I don't think you're under any ethical or moral duty to call it to their attention per se. The other thing, though, is you could be premature, too. I mean, she may move, she may do this, but how are you going to be certain what her actual intention is? And so you can also take the position, I think, well, she's moving out of the jurisdiction, but I don't know, so I'm not even going to think about it until the school year is over to make sure that she isn't just a temporary move or, in other words, your information is not perfect.
Right.
So with that in mind, I think that gives you a little more wiggle room as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
540-0580, Karl Rominger answering your legal questions. Mike, you want to talk about divorce?
Your favorite subject.
I know.
Hey, here's my situation. I'm about 12 months in. We filed one of those no-fault divorces. Basically, the hostilities had grown, so hard that basically I just, went down and filed just to kind of get things moving. But it's been suggested to me by some folks that I left a lot of things undone in terms of trying to attach her retirement. And I'm just wondering if at this point it's all moot that I've foregone, even though there has been no judgment.
Okay.
I know very, very little about that aspect.
So I'm just trying to figure this out. Somebody did file a divorce?
Yes.
And has it been finalized?
No.
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on still.
Correct.
Okay. So you probably need to nail down all the property issues.
And how do you bring the other party into that discussion? I mean, or does this thing just go into perpetuity until...
Somebody has to do something. So one way is to get the other party to a table. How do we do a four-way sit-down? Sometimes between the lawyers we go back and forth. If we can't open a dialogue, then we use the litigation route. We serve on the other party documents that require them to divulge bank accounts, financial information, etc.
Right.
We file our own statements on those issues, and then we go to see with the divorce master, who's like a hearing officer, who's then going to take testimony. And a lot of times that solves the case because by the time you get to that stage, the person's been forced to sort of account for everything. And in particular, if they have counsel, a natural settlement will a lot of times give rise, if that makes sense. But if that doesn't happen, then we just push through the court system and finalize it.
Okay, yeah, because I started doing some research, and of course, you utilizing the internet because I did not retain counsel.
Mm-hmm.
Bad move on my part, but. The internet makes mention of what's known as QDRO, Quadro.
Quadro is an order that would be entered to handle the retirement.
Right.
And, of course, you have to have an agreement on it or a court order on it. And then if the parties sign off on a Quadro, the judge will sign off on it. And the way we get a Quadro is we usually go through the retirement system to get a template for what they're looking for. And because every pension looks at them a little differently.
Right.
We get the quadro put together and we get the parties to sign, but if we can't get them to sign, then we got to get a court order and we got to get a judge to decide that, or the master to decide as part of an equitable distribution.
All right. So basically, that's something. I mean, because the state retirement system, is that something that they're bound to just hand over if you call them up and say, "Hey, I need your template"? They just
you just ask for their sample quadro, but the sample obviously is going to require a lot of plugging in and I mean, for instance, have you guys calculated the coverture fraction? And I throw that out there, but that's the fraction of the retirement that's marital versus non-marital, for instance.
Right.
Also, are you interested in, if it's your pension, maybe you don't want this, but if it's their pension, do you want a survivor's benefit placed on it? All kinds of things.
Okay.
All right, my friend.
And that'd be something I'd look to your office.
Yeah, we'd be happy to help you.
All right.
Listen, it's never too late to bring a lawyer in and just sort of clean it up a little bit.
Wonderful. Thank you, Karl.
All right, my friend. Take care.
Take care.
540-0580. Oh, I've got a minute here before the break, so I'll just filibuster for a second and remind you guys that you can go to the Carlisle Bakery in Carlisle at 35 South Hanover Street and pick up a free coffee mug. Just tell them that I sent you. They're open Saturday through Monday, or Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's at the Carlisle Bakery on 35 South Hanover Street. Get your free mug. August 25th from 2 to 3 p.m. I'm going to have David Nesbitt here answering your elder law questions. He's with Keystone Elder Law. So make sure you mark your calendar for August 25th. That's going to be must-listen radio, particularly if you're over the age of 40. Or you know somebody over the age of 40. On Tuesday, September 4th, again, I'll be at the Harrisburg Hunters and Anglers at 7 p.m. 540-0580. I'll see you guys after the break. Hey, welcome back. Karl Rominger here. 540-0580. Now let's talk for a minute about this shooting at the Batman movie. First of all, it did cause me some pause. I was thinking about going last night, and then I thought, we'll wait and see if the copycats are out of the woodwork yet or not. It's kind of a tragedy, obviously. The political fallout's going to be interesting. Now, my understanding is, again, this is all based on the preliminary information, is that he did not come in the front door but came in an emergency exit. So, you can put all the signs up on the door you want, no guns, no knives. You can put all the security up there, all the pat-downs and everything. But as long as somebody's willing to beat their way through a door on a movie theater, then you're going to have somebody coming in. And, of course, I guess you could argue, well, there shouldn't be any unsecured doors or easily open doors. And then what happens when the movie theater starts on fire is everybody's trapped. So there shouldn't be some great call out there for more security at movie theaters per se. Other interesting thing about this guy is, despite how some people automatically jump to the conclusion that he probably comes from some broken home and that he's a loser and dirt poor and disaffected, it turns out that he's a PhD candidate, considered brilliant, comes from an intact family, mother, father, seemingly normal, probably just suffered from mental health issues. And I've said this earlier today, but the problem with the people that are crazy is they're always the last ones to know it, or they're in perpetual denial of their mental health issues. He probably had some kind of underlying mental health issue that needed treatment and refused to treat it and then went down this road. The other interesting thing that might come out of this is, what's the effect going to be on the movie industry? I'd actually read an article where that was one of the concerns that the movie industry's had for a long time, is that a terrorist attack at a movie theater, and this wasn't a terrorist attack, but it's the equivalent of one. I mean, he killed so many people and injured so many people, could really change the dynamic of people wanting to go to the movies in public. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but watch for those things in the future here. I think the important thing to remember is it is a dangerous world. You can't just trust the government to protect your safety. You've got to pay attention to your surroundings, but you're never going to remove all the possibilities of danger. None of us are immortal, and a tree can just fall over on you while you're walking down the street. So no matter what you do, no matter how healthy you eat, you can always get hit by that random streetcar. And here, unfortunately for these folks, that random streetcar was somebody who was probably obviously mentally ill. But I think that's probably somewhere we need to be better at, is identifying the mentally ill and perhaps making sure they get adequate treatment. 540-0580. Andy. Hey, Andy.
Oh, hello. I had a question about trespass, because you brought up something that sounded related earlier when you were talking about the guy with gun permits and licenses. My family's got a hunting camp.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem we have there is people trespassing all the time when we're not there, or you just see tire tracks as you walk into it, so you know someone else is in there because you don't recognize the tire tracks. Now, we have no trespassing signs. Are you saying we put up no vehicle signs? Not only can we get them for trespass, we can get them for driving without a license?
Oh, no. This has to do with the fact that the concealed carry permit law, that you can't just carry a gun concealed in Pennsylvania. There's an enabling statute for it.
Right.
And that enabling statute contains language that says private landowners can prevent you from doing that.
Oh, I thought it was like if you could just put restrictions, like really narrowing it down. Every time they do a violation of the license, you could tack that on to whatever they did wrong.
Yeah, I just don't think that what do I want to say, that there's a vehicle code violation per se. In other words, there may be a vehicle code violation out there for driving a car off-road, but I don't think so. And there's no trespass, but it's still a trespass. I just want to make sure you understand that that's a unique circumstance because theoretically, under the Pennsylvania law, you can open carry a gun anywhere.
Right.
You can't.
So something just based on gun laws isn't just general trespass stuff then.
Yeah, that's just gun law.
Okay, I thought if I could just add a couple more signs there, I could tack on more charges on people rather than just try to get a trespass filed, which is tough.
Here's what you're going to get, okay? Go buy one of those nice trail cams and just start taking pictures of the license plates as they go by.
Okay.
All right, brother.
All right. Thank you.
540-0580. Bill, you're on the air.
Yes, we have a hunting camp with 9 owners.
Okay.
And we need quite a bit of maintenance work done. Well, a new roof for one. And 2 of the 9 don't want to pay their share. Do we have any legal recourse on that?
Well, how is it owned?
1/9. 9 people own 1/9.
Is it like just on the deed? Everybody has a 9th on the deed?
Yes.
Okay, then you have you have a right to get contribution for. In other words, each of you gets 1/9 of the proceeds of the property. And each of you owes 1/9 of the liabilities of the property.
Right.
Ultimately, what you could do is partition them off, which is basically ask a court to remove them from the deed.
Okay.
And they would have to be paid the value of their land less anything that they owed for rents or expenses.
Okay.
And that's how you would do it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, brother.
Bye.
540-0580. TJ.
Good afternoon, Carl. You are 100% correct in one of your recent statements here, and it is this. Every time a tragedy happens, like what happened in Colorado or let's say like Virginia Tech, there's always these hand-wringing about tighter gun laws and all that baloney. The problem is, again, like you said, and you said it 100% correct, the police and our government can't protect us at all times. We need, and that's why our Second Amendment is clear that we need to be well armed.
Right.
As citizens, we need to be well armed. I mean, if somebody had been armed in that theater and all, they could have stopped this guy and prevented, a lot of that tragedy. So, again, we can't count on our government to protect us from threats, foreign or domestic. We have to defend ourselves at all times.
Well, it's a symptom partly, and I heard the report that when his mother was called. She said, "Oh, that could be him." In other words, the family knew that he had issues. And
people don't get help when they have trouble. You know some of the troubles I went through from a recent call I gave you a few months ago. I could have went crazy and went after these people and killed them, but I didn't because I got solid Judeo-Christian values in my head and also common sense realized I'm not going to throw my life down the drain just to take care of people because after all, that's what God is for. He deals with them in the end.
Yeah, and the answer is there's just never going to be any explanation. There's not going to be any good reason why this guy did what he did. He's obviously way out there. The good news is, though, he didn't kill himself, so now he can just sit and think about what he did for
that's true, but on the sad side of that, he'll sit in prison the rest of his life, and who's going to pay for his room, board, and 3 meals a day? The taxpayers. That useless scum should have shot himself dead, and he would be saving the taxpayers money. That's my opinion.
Right. Well,
I'm pro death penalty 100%, man. I'll tell you, right on.
I don't know. Does anybody know? Was that Colorado, right?
Colorado.
Do they have a death penalty?
I'd have to look that up because I know there's about maybe 10 or 12 states that don't have a death penalty, and I know we have a death penalty. I don't know if Colorado does or not.
Well, there's a joke about the Pennsylvania death penalty. We have a death penalty, but
it's life imprisonment.
But you really can't get one here.
Yeah, unless you're willing. Like, back in the 90s, we had, two of the 3 that got executed under Tom Ridge, and death penalties, death warrants. They voluntarily gave up and decided 2 of them were in 1995, and the other one, I think, was in 99. I don't know if that guy gave up or if he just, wore out his appeals.
Right.
But that happens and all. But, yeah, like I say, I'm call me an Old Testament type, but I'd like to see that kind of justice.
It looks like, I just pulled this up, Wikipedia, capital punishment in Colorado is legal in Colorado. And
so just like Pennsylvania.
Very similar. At least one of 17 aggravating factors. He's definitely going to get death row. Methods of execution or lethal injection is the sole method.
Yeah. I say bring back the good old-fashioned electric chair. Some of these people deserve to be fried.
Well, listen, here's the answer. The answer is we're trying to always be a less cruel and more humane state.
Are less cruel, and they're not humane, so they deserve to suffer the same fate. That's my opinion. I mean, why give them humane treatment?
But be very afraid of a state that has power over life and death. Remember that. The only difference between a king and the president is, one can't just kill you when they want to.
Oh, well, this one we have now is dangerously moving toward king status.
Yeah, well, that's what they say.
People.
All right, TJ, we're getting in the weeds. We're in the weeds.
Scary times we're in. Hey, you have a good day.
All right, my friend.
Work.
That's my Bob Durgan impression. We're getting in the weeds. John, you're on the air. Hey, John.
Hey, how are you doing today?
Good.
Hey, about a year and a half ago, I purchased an extended warranty for my wife's 10-year-old Mustang, and part of what was covered in that contract was losing a head gasket. A couple of months ago, I started having some oil into the fluids, and took it to my mechanic, blew a hose, and he said that it was the head gasket. And so they took it apart, and he said it was the head gasket. And of course, you've got to get hold of their inspector. Their company's inspector has to come in and see, what they think the problem was. And he denied it was the head gasket and said they weren't going to pay for it. Didn't authorize the service on the car. So my guy talked to several of the mechanics and also the forward head mechanic and told them the problem. And they said the only thing they ever saw was that to fix it was the head gasket, change the head gasket on it. And so he did, and it fixed it. And they're still denying the claim because we didn't get authorization. Is that a breaking of the contract on their part? Now, I've also contacted them afterwards and told them, how could we have fixed it under authorization when you would not authorize it in the first place? You refused to authorize it. That was the problem. Right. We fixed it, and that was the problem. And now you're still saying it's not the problem, but it's running. The car's running fine. And they offered me the bill was like $1,500, and they offered me like $500 to kind of help me out.
And how much did we need total?
15.
So they give you like half.
Yeah, well, not even half.
Right. And, of course, here's what's going to happen. If you go to try to fight it in court, your legal fees are probably going to build up.
I can't do it like in small claims court?
You can, yeah. You could sue in small claims court and see what happens.
Like $25, wouldn't it? And also, I also said I was going to turn it into the state attorney general.
Yeah, that's a possibility as well.
I don't know what they do. But
I'd have to read the actual warranty language. My inclination is that those things are always filled with so many little potholes.
That's what I'm saying. We have to be able to prove it's already fixed. How are we going to prove it now?
Right.
Other than it fixed it, to me that tells me that's the problem.
That's a pretty good test.
Yeah. But I don't know what the judge is going to say in the small claims court. What's my chance of collecting anything from them?
Well, and then the other problem is
Colorado.
There you go. Then you really got a problem. And then once you win in small claims court, if they just pay the appellate fee of about $80, you got to start from scratch in the big court.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So I should take the $500, huh?
Yeah, I would take it and run.
All righty, that's what I thought too.
All right, boss.
Thanks a lot.
540-0580. When we get back after the break, we'll take some more calls. Got Tom Holden. Hey, welcome back. Karl Rominger here. 540-0580, answering your legal question. Just want to remind you, August 25th from 2 to 3 p.m., I'll have David Nesbitt from Keystone Elder Law on here answering your elder law questions. And September 4th at 7 p.m., I'll be at the Harrisburg Hunters and Anglers Association discussing gun rights. So make sure you guys remember to do that. Tom, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, Tom.
This is Tom. You got me?
I got you.
This is more of a comment rather than a question. Are you aware that there is a investigation going on in Bradford County involving 5 state troopers and the district attorney up there in collusion and beating a man within an inch of his life?
No. Was that the one that's been on tape that I saw maybe that was on the Blaze?
No, this one is called the Robert Leone story, Leone. It's on YouTube. It's 37 minutes long, where this guy was tasered 15 times and he was handcuffed and shackled, and he was beaten literally within an inch of his life. And his picture is on the video, the mugshot that they took of him, and he's in terrible shape. And the narrator, there were two narrators. One was a retired Pennsylvania state policeman, and the other one was a former municipal police officer who graduated from the Pennsylvania State Police Academy. And it really tears you up. It's very sad to think that there are people in the police departments that are doing it. Not all, I understand that, but there are some. But this is a video on YouTube that is well worth watching. It's called the Robert Leone story. And I don't know, you're not the law firm that's handling it, are you?
No, not at all.
Okay, well, they just got he was turned down twice asked for a retrial, and they wouldn't do it. He had 24 counts charged against him, and the jury dismissed 20 out of the 24. They saw through it that it was smoke and mirrors, but they did get him for failure to stop at the signal of a police officer and a couple others. And they,
right.
like I said, it can be watched on YouTube, and it's called the Robert Leone story. And I appreciate you let me say that.
Just spell that Leone for me again.
Leone.
Gotcha.
It's called. If you go to YouTube, it's called the Robert Leone story, and it's very sad. It's very sad, and I hope that something can be done on his behalf with whoever it is that the law firm is. It'll really break your heart to watch it. I'm not kidding.
Well, I will. I'll post it here on my Facebook page, or at least an article to it, so people can look at it. Okay, and then they can draw their conclusions from it. Obviously, I always start from the proposition, as you know, that everybody's innocent until proven guilty on both sides of the fence.
Correct.
If some police officers did commit some brutality, obviously they need to answer for it. And if they didn't, hopefully the justice system will sort it out. I always have some concern in these cases. There's always two sides to the story. But we've been involved in cases where people have accused police officers of brutality, and it just didn't pan out or didn't happen at all. On the other hand, we had the one down in Lancaster a while back where there was clearly video showing something occurred. Although, interestingly, people even watching something on video could come to different conclusions.
You have an office in Lancaster?
We do. It's 1000 North Prince.
Okay, because I'll be probably getting in contact with you sometime later on this week for some business. I am being sued, and I am suing.
Okay.
It has to do with a credit card, and I've countersued them for $50,000, where they sued me for $5,400 when the bill was paid. So, and the attorney that I had is retiring, and so I'm kind of in a limbo. And they asked for, I can't even pronounce the word, they asked for an arbitration hearing when the $50,000 one takes precedent over the $5,400 one that they sued me for, which
that's interesting.
I already paid it. I had the paperwork to prove it, and I beat it I won it at the district justice level, and they filed suit into Lancaster County Common Pleas Court.
Mm-hmm.
What do they call it? A pre-efficacy hearing? I can't even say it.
I'm not sure. You've got with preliminary objections, maybe?
Well, they never answered my interrogatories that I asked for when I asked for the debt validation pertaining to the receipts and everything like that. They never answered any of that.
Interesting.
And so they asked for a hearing and I'll have to show you the paperwork.
Yeah, we'd be interested in taking a look at it. All right, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
540-0580, Karl Rominger answering your legal questions. Lenora.
Hello.
What's going on?
A young couple in my family recently rented an apartment, I think just not quite 2 weeks ago. During the week, I went with them to begin setting things up, and I was appalled at the condition of the apartment. It's in Cumberland County. Mm-hmm. The windows, every window in the three-room apartment, none of them move. You cannot open up and get air or anything like that. And one window, it was just a storm window around it. There was no window there. There are many other issues. My question is, can we make the landlord repair the issues, specifically the windows? There's no fresh air getting into the house. Is there any organization in the county that they can turn to for help?
A house comes with a warranty of habitability, or I should say apartment. The idea being that it would be habitable. So the landlord does have to meet that minimum standard.
Okay.
If they don't, then we can say that you are constructively evicted, meaning that you can't live there any longer and you can break the lease.
Okay.
You can also, if you want, withhold rent and then sue the landlord and go that way.
Okay. All right. But is there an organization in the county that they can go to? I mean, through the courthouse or...
well, there's legal services maybe who they would want to see.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. I thank you for your
information. All right, and they can start by calling the Cumberland County Bar Association for a referral to legal services.
Okay.
Or their pro bono program.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Interesting. You know, the answer on this warranty of habitability, when you move into a place, it's assumed that it's going to be tolerable, habitable, able to accommodate human beings, etc. And so you have the absolute right to do that. Now, this withholding rent thing, a lot of times people go, I'm not paying my rent because the landlord won't fix this, or the landlord has left the house in such a condition that the water doesn't run, etc. The big problem we run into, is we see that people quite often don't put the money in a separate account and hold it out. So if the judge is trying to figure out, is this person unable to pay their rent, unwilling to pay their rent, or legitimately withholding their rent, the fact that it's all paid into an account somewhere is a pretty good sign that you must legitimately feel wronged because you could have just given that money to the landlord, but you haven't spent it on an Xbox or anything else like that. So keep that in the back of your head when you're in a landlord-tenant situation and you're the landlord and the tenant's got the money put in a separate account. You might want to scratch your head and say, maybe I'm not a good landlord. Conversely, if you're the tenant and you don't put it in a separate account, be prepared for the judge not to really believe your reasoning. And if it just so happens that you can't afford the rent and you have a legitimate beef at the same time, sometimes that legitimate beef is going to get swept under the rug because you're not paying your rent, and that's going to be a strong sign. So I always tell people, setting that rent aside in a separate account is a strong message to the court that you're not just not wanting to pay, but you have a legitimate, bona fide issue with the conditions as the house is being, or the apartment is being presented to you. So I would keep that in the back of your head. When we come back, obviously, we have a whole other hour here live. So the talk line number is 540-0580, and I'll be here from 2 o'clock until 3 o'clock answering your legal questions live on the air, 540-0580. Throughout the week, if you need a lawyer, go to romingerlaw.com. Join me on Facebook. I just posted the video that caller was talking about a minute ago. Or I shouldn't say the video, but an article that talks about it and then links to the video so we can see what he was talking about. Again, romingerlaw.com, or the office number is 717-241-6070. So throughout the week, 717-241-6070. Talk line here is 540-0580. I'll be answering legal questions for the next hour. See you guys in a few minutes.